Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Daily Maverick webinar on practical AI. My name is Sarah Hook. I'm Daily Maverick's community manager, but I was previously the deputy newsletter editor, which is how I met Jeremy. We worked on bringing his Wonder Tools newsletter to the Daily Maverick audience. Jeremy Caplan is a former journalist at Times Magazine, and he is now a professor at the City University of New York, where he specializes in teaching and AI. And I'm going to hand over to him to introduce himself and introduce what we're going to be talking about today. If you have any questions, you're welcome to pop them through to us in the chat bar. And we're really excited to engage with you today about how AI can be used to make our lives better, more productive, and more creative. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah, and it's a delight to be here. I'm really excited to talk about AI. We hear so many scare stories about how AI is creating all sorts of problems for society, and we're not going to focus on the ethical issues today, some of them being significant. We're actually going to focus on the practical ways that AI can be relevant for us and tools that are actually worth your time. Before we get to that, we'll dive into those soon. Just a word about myself. I live here in New York City, far from probably many of you. And I'm a journalist. I worked for Time Magazine, as Sarah mentioned, writing about business and technology, and found that the world of journalism was a great way to learn, and eventually decided to share some of what I was learning as a teacher. So now I'm a professor, as Sarah mentioned, at the City University of New York, and I specialize in innovation in journalism, in media, and how we can communicate in new ways and explore the technology that's changing our world in so many different ways. I teach at the City University and work with journalists from around the world, helping them start up new micro ventures, newsletters and podcasts and other kinds of creative new journalism ventures. I also write this newsletter called Wonder Tools, which some of you may receive by email. And my goal is to help people basically make sense of this complicated, exciting but complicated and sometimes overwhelming world of technology. My mother often calls and asks about the latest tools and technology, and practicing explaining things to her has helped me learn to write in a way that hopefully people can understand and appreciate in just a few minutes some of the amazing new tools and capabilities we have with AI and other kinds of productivity tools. One thing that I want to say as we start out here is that I think it's important that we bring an attitude of curiosity and also pragmatism. So not every tool is going to be useful for every person. Some tools will be more useful for some of us than others. And so if you take one tool that's resonant for you, that's useful, potentially something you want to experiment with today, if you take one of those away, that will be a win, because these kinds of tools can really enhance our workflow and make our lives a little bit more efficient or enjoyable or creative or productive. And I'll show you the ways I mean that in a moment. But first, just to note that, we've had so many new technologies in recent years, some of which really didn't end up being as useful for many of us as we thought they might be. We don't necessarily consume a lot of news, most of us, many of us, these days in the form of a Facebook Live or in the form of an instant article on Facebook. Virtual reality and augmented reality didn't quite expand as quickly or as impactfully as some of the advocates in the early days expected they would. So my point here is to say that even as we dive into AI and explore all of its capabilities and wonders and utility, we should be pragmatic and choose the tools that are useful for us and not be too concerned when not every tool is essential for us. So that's the approach I hope you'll take, the mindset that I try to adopt as I explore these tools of curious pragmatism. So I'm going to share with you in the coming minutes a few different ways that I think AI can be really useful for us in our everyday lives. These are tools and tactics that we can use in our work. In some cases, we can use this in our leisure time for our hobbies and our creative aspects of our lives. And each one involves a couple of different AI tools that we can use. One note that I'll offer is that most of these tools can be used for free, at least initially. So I have no expectation that everyone has huge budgets for these tools. Many of the tools are set up such that they're a freemium model, meaning that it's free to use for a while and free to use to a certain extent. But if you use them extensively, they're going to ask you to pay a subscription fee, right? And that's a typical business model now, so that the companies can stay in business, right? And they can pay for their cost of doing business. But my point is that you can adopt these tools for free or experiment with them for free by and large. And when that's not the case, I'll mention that as an exception. Second thing I'd mention about these tools is that they're intended to be pretty easy. You don't have to be a coder. My assumption is most of us are not professional technologists. We're working in a lot of different fields, and so you don't have to be an expert. That's part of what I'm hoping to offer, is a simple on-ramp to some of these kinds of tools, even if you're not a professional technologist. And again, my assumption is most of us are not. We are just learning as we go. So you don't need necessarily a lot of money. You don't need a lot of tech skill. You don't need complicated equipment. Most of these tools will work on any device you have, any kind of laptop you have, any platform you have. Some of them also work on mobile devices as well as desktop computers. And so with that, having said that, let's dive in. Sarah, are there any quick questions that we should address before we dive into the first set of practical tools?
I can't see any questions at the moment, but I'm excited to learn more about these free products that you've mentioned. As we know, the American to South African exchange rate is not ideal for those of us who want to use these American products or these overseas products. Um, but you did ask us how many people do use AI. And from the results that we have, or that I had a few minutes ago, we see that 25% of people do use AI a lot. 47% of people say they use it on the odd occasion, and 29% say they never use it. Personally, I'm an AI newbie. I'm yet to be fully converted, so we'll see how I feel about that by the end of this webinar. And I would say I fall into that middle range of people of I use it on the odd occasion.
Great, great. So about a quarter of people have not used it or don't use it of this audience that we have today. About half,
Yep.
as I understood it, use it a little bit, and about a quarter use it quite a lot. So it's a great kind of bell curve, and hopefully by the end of this, we'll have moved you a little bit forward, at least in terms of curiosity, right? So that you'll be curious to experiment and do it in a way that resonates with you, right? That makes sense for yourself. So when we're thinking about using AI, I want to encourage us to think about it in kind of these four steps. First is the purpose. So we're not using these tools just for the sake of using them. We're using them because we are preparing for a big presentation, right? Or we are preparing for a big trip. I'm from Boston originally, and I'm taking my two daughters and my wife, and we're going on a vacation back to Boston this summer. And I realized there are a lot of new places, a lot of new activities that I haven't discovered, haven't been to, and don't know about, and over the years. And so I've used AI, for example, to help me develop a plan for that trip that we have upcoming. That's a kind of leisure use case. So in any case, the idea is you start with the purpose. You start with a goal in mind, a problem you're trying to address, or a work opportunity, or a leisure opportunity, creative opportunity. And then you think about a platform that's going to be helpful for that. And I'll share with you as we go what those platforms and tools are that I find most useful. Then you prompt the platform, or you instruct it in some way, right? Depending on the platform, the instructions or the setup will be slightly different. And then you adjust it, you polish it, you adapt it, you humanize it, right? So there's always a human in the loop. The human, you, or whoever is working with AI, is always the first and the last person to touch this material, right? We're never using the material, almost never, I would say, without a human in the loop, right? So this is the AI is acting as an assistant for us, much in the same way a online dictionary or spell checker or thesaurus would act as an assistant for us in a simpler way. Okay, so first thing, AI can help us take meeting notes. So as it happens, in this particular meeting, I'm taking notes because I want to remember what I've said and what I've learned along the way. And I use a tool called Granola. And what Granola does is basically take notes. It records, transcribes, and summarizes any kind of meeting that you're in. And it's a more powerful version of what we had earlier with other tools like Otter and many other transcription tools. And one of the nice things about Granola is that it sits on your computer. It doesn't attend the meeting, right? You don't have to have it invited as a bot to attend the meeting. Some of us have had that experience with bots attending meetings. You can also use those kinds of bots, but this one sits on your computer, which means you can actually use it for an in-person meeting as well, if you want to. And obviously with the permission of whoever you're meeting with. This isn't a surreptitious kind of a thing. And the nice thing about it is that when it's done, it basically allows you to get a summarized version of the meeting, but it also, this is what it looks like. So you can also take notes during the meeting, and it combines the notes that you take with the AI summary of the other material, right? So we often can't type in everything that's going on in the meeting, but we might want to mention a few key points as we go. And the AI enhances your notes and gives you a full summary of the meeting. So just to illustrate what that looks like, I'm going to share my Granola instance, and I'm going to open that up here. And you should see on your screen now some meetings that I've been a part of. Here's a meeting I was in yesterday, and I'm dropped in some notes at the beginning of the meeting, but they're very messy. And this is a nice, clean summary of the meeting that I was in, right? And then in addition to that, I can ask for a little set of action items. So what are the next steps for the meeting that I need to take care of? And Granola is going to list for me a very specific set of things I need to do following up on that meeting in terms of revising my slides, et cetera, et cetera. Now, maybe I also want to write a quick follow-up email. And in many cases, I'll do this on my own. I don't necessarily need the AI to help me each time, but I have a lot of meetings. I don't know about all of you, but some weeks I have 20 or even 30 meetings on my calendar. And if I want to write a quick follow-up email for each of those, even if I just take 5 minutes, that, if we do the math, that's about 2.5 hours, right, of just time sending those quick follow-up messages, right? And if I take longer on any of them, that will really eat up more time. So this is a nice, quick follow-up email, just thanking the people I was meeting with, reminding us all of the key topics we discussed. I can also list all the questions that we discussed, and I can then copy that material. I can send it to Slack. I can send it in an email. So this is basically providing me detailed and helpful notes on everything that I have done in that meeting and talked about in that meeting, and it's quite a handy way of basically making sure that I don't forget anything that I'm doing in those meetings. So that is the
In terms
first.
of privacy, Jeremy, does Granola still process in the cloud? We have a question from Michelle. And what is the risk of privacy and confidentiality when using this external platform?
Yeah, all of these tools are, their business viability rests on security and privacy, right? If they are, and they're used by businesses as well as individuals, right? And if a business, a highly secure financial business or business focused on law or any kind of, secure information were to use this and have that information leak in any which way, they would immediately withdraw their business, and the business viability of this kind of operation would disappear, right? So they, not out of the goodness of their heart, but because of the business demands, are very, very secure about their information. It's encrypted, it's secured. Now, there may be some information that you don't want a meeting note taker to take, and that's fine. And I'm not advocating that you necessarily use it all the time for everything. If there's a very private or personal conversation, there may be no need for that. But a routine kind of conversation at work, it can be quite helpful, and it could be a time saver for. And there are security and privacy regulations and rules and encryption that are put in place to ensure the safety and security of your information. And you can read more about that, and I encourage people to read the privacy and security policies for any tool you're using, just to look under the hood a little bit and make sure that you're comfortable with the tool and how they're guarding and protecting and securing your information. So it's an important consideration, and thanks for raising that. One thing I'll mention, since the question came up, is that there are actually a number of tools, of AI tools, and maybe I'll jump to them very quickly, where you can actually have essentially a private AI. So you can actually use an AI tool that's not even online, right? So with a tool like Gen AI, it simply runs on your laptop. It's running, you can even run it without being connected to the internet. So no other computer, no one else is receiving any of the information that you are looking at. It's essentially running a little calculation right? Which is how AI works on your computer. And you can use this. There's another one called Anything LLM. For those of you that are working on a Windows or Mac OS or Linux, any kind of machine, this one is completely free. It's open source. You download it. Again, you can be offline. I've tested this without being connected to the internet to make sure it
Oh,
was
wow.
totally secure and safe, and it's completely free. So there are options for those of you who are very, very concerned about that and about the security and privacy of information. There are options to do that in a completely private way. So, shall we move on from meeting
Yeah.
notes? Great. So, and by the way, if you do want to try to transcribe materials and you don't just want live meetings, but let's say you're recording meetings or you have recorded Zoom events or other kinds of events that you have recorded, you can use a tool called Mac Whisper on your laptop, and that can transcribe basically any kind of material, even YouTube videos or videos you've recorded or audio you've recorded of meetings or what have you. And that lives on your computer and it transcribes essentially for free. There's a pro version you can pay a little bit for, a one-time fee if you want some bonus features or the highest quality transcription possible. But I use the free version and find it to be very, very useful. That can also work for live meetings as well. And if you're
Mhm.
on a Windows machine, there's a similar tool called Vibe. So there are multiple kinds of tools that will do this kind of work for you.
I'm interested in what considerations people should make or have when choosing an AI service because we're getting a lot of questions about which service to choose. Michael asks the pros and cons between granola versus supernormal, for example. So
Yeah.
it's impossible to mention all of the different AI services that we have, but what considerations should somebody keep in mind when they're choosing a product?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just while we're on the point about Supernormal, I use Supernormal as well. I find it very useful. One specific feature it has that's unique is in a summary after a meeting's over, you can pick a part of the summary and say, I want more detail on that aspect of the meeting. So you can expand certain aspects of the summary, which is a unique feature in Supernormal. Another thing you can do is you can expand the summary once it's been created. You can say, give me a new section of the summary just mentioning all of the concerns that people had, or just mentioning all of the new ideas that people had. So you can customize the summary in a nice way with Supernormal, and it's a high quality tool. There are many such tools. This is a big and growing category of AI tools. I also use another tool called Fathom to video when we're video recording meetings because it has a time code of everything we talked about, and I can jump to just that part of the meeting. So if you're using video meetings and you need to save the video component, that's a tool for that specifically. So there are many of these different kinds of tools. They each have their different advantages, just like you can have Pepsi and Coke and many other kinds of colas to choose from. It's partly a matter of subjective taste and personal preference. There are a couple of other considerations I would encourage people to think about. One is the security and privacy. So some organizations are more kind of focused on being doubly and triply and quadruply secure. And if that's important to you, you can use that as one of your criteria. Another is cost. So as I said, many of these tools have a quite liberal free plan. So on Granola, I've been using free plan for quite a while, and it works very well. Other tools like Supernormal you might run out of minutes more quickly and might have to pay a higher fee. A third consideration is Teams. Granola just this week added a team functionality. So if you're sharing meetings across teams, you can use it that way. Some tools have that kind of team functionality, some don't. If you're working in a team and you need to think about that aspect, that's a consideration. A fourth consideration would be how nice is it to look at? Like, what is the aesthetic like? I like the simplicity of Granola. It's very easy to use. It doesn't have overwhelming menus. It's the quality of transcription is excellent. It's organized in a way that I like. And so the aesthetic feel of a tool to me is also very important. Because if it's a tool you're going to use all the time, you want it to feel enjoyable to use it, not like it's a bear or it's annoying to use. So those are some of
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
considerations. Yeah. And then how reliable is it, right? If it's crashing all the time when you're testing it, if it doesn't work, if it, is continually freezing, that's obviously an issue. But these tools, by and large, the ones I'm showing you, you're not going to have that issue. Or at least I haven't had that issue. Okay, moving on to the next category. This is one of my favorite ways to use AI. I find that as someone who has lots and lots of ideas, I don't always have an easy time getting my ideas out of my head and onto paper, right? I have sometimes have a cold start problem or a blank page problem or writer's block, all these different terms for this same kind of challenge that many of us face, whatever field you're in, right? This happens to me when I'm teaching, preparing a new class. It happens when I'm writing, preparing a new newsletter post. It happens when I'm preparing a new presentation. It happens in all different contexts for many of us. And what these next tools allow you to do is use your voice. So many of us find it's kind of a trick of nature or human nature that it's much easier to talk in some cases than it is to write. And so there are three ways that I want to suggest we can use um, AI tools to help with this. And the first is what I call bionic transcription. This is a term that I use to describe, just going to open up here, this tool. And what you can do with this kind of tool is you essentially can record something. And when you record it, it's transcribing what you write, and then it's recording, it's transcribing, then it's transforming. So it's turning your rambling into a summary or into an outline or into a draft or into a script or into whatever format of a draft of an email, even whatever kind of thing you're working on, it can basically transform what you've just dictated into that format. So I'm going to just illustrate this with my phone, which I have here in front of me. And I'm now recording into Letterly, the tool that I'm using. And Letterly I use for 5 different purposes. I use it to summarize and outline my ideas for an upcoming class that I'm teaching. When I'm just thinking out loud, I can often think about the things that I want to cover in that class session and the ideas I want to talk about. And I don't have the pressure of a blank page where I feel a need to write it perfectly. I can just kind of talk it out loud. Second use case is when I'm taking a walk in the park and I have an idea for a newsletter post I want to write. I can talk through that idea and a few things I want to mention, a couple of tools I want to include, a couple of questions I want to answer, and I can just talk out loud, not even looking at the screen. I usually have my AirPods in, just my phone's in my pocket, and I'm just talking about the ideas. Maybe I look a little crazy walking in Central Park here, but so many of us are talking on our phones to ourselves. So that's a second use case, is getting my writing ideas out. A third will be when I'm preparing for a workshop, whether it's this kind of a webinar or any kind of external workshop, a special event, a special talk, a special speech, a special toast. I will talk through a couple of the ideas. And notice I'm not trying to do it perfectly. I might have an and ah filler word. I might have a little digression. And a fourth one is just when I'm planning out my day. What do I need to do today? What are some of the key things I want to accomplish? What are the obstacles I'm expecting to face or the distractions I'm expecting to face? And let me just think about the key priorities I have. And then fifthly, at the end of the day, what did I actually do today? What was a highlight? What was something that I learned today? Who was someone interesting that I spoke with or met or learned from today? What was something that I read and I was inspired by or watched or heard? What was something surprising that happened today? How did I feel during the day? What was the low point? What was the high point? What could I do tomorrow to make tomorrow an even better day? What can I learn from today? So those are 5 different examples of things that I am thinking about at different times of my life, and that I can use this kind of bionic dictation to record. Now, what I'm going to do now is I've been recording this, right? And so I'm going to click stop. And what's happening is it is basically going to now process what I've just been what I've just been recording, right? It's going to transcribe what I've just been recording, and it is going to give me a summary of that, right? It's going to actually, first it's going to just give me the transcription. Then I'm going to ask it to give me a summary of what I said, right? And I can actually turn it into whatever format I want, right? So I'm actually using the desktop version of this software as well. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to switch my screen share to show you this screen now. So this is Letterly. And here's the raw summary, right? This is just a raw summary of what I just recorded. And what I'm going to ask it to do now is to kind of use AI magic to basically reorganize that. And since I've used it a lot, it kind of knows that I want it to put it into a list format, right? So now it's just summarized the 5 use cases for Letterly that I've just been talking about. And hopefully you can kind of get a little bit of a picture of the use case of this. Now, let's say I wanted to email Sarah these 5 ideas, right? I could basically say, you know what, I want to turn this into an email. Let's say I want to turn it into a casual email. And I haven't lost the other version, right? I can flip back and forth to these different versions. So now I can grab a casual version of this to send to Sarah, let's say, just basically summarizing these different use cases, right, that I've just been talking about if I want to explain to her. Or let's say I want to turn it into a formal communication. I can do that as well. Like I can have it create a formal email out of that as well. So I can even create one of my newsletter drafts from my own words in this way, right? It would still require a huge amount of polishing and editing, but the nice thing is it's from my own words, so it's not adding its own material. It's actually just taking my own words. These are my own ideas that it's helping me elucidate, clarify, clean up, and I find that quite helpful.
Jeremy, you mentioned that your AI now knows your tone and they know how you speak. I'm curious, we have a question here from Anka, and I know we had a question earlier as well. Do these tools only work for English or can we use them in other languages? If
Yeah,
not these tools, do you have suggestions on other tools that have a broader range of languages that we could use?
yes, a great question. And these do work in many different languages, as do the meeting tools. So this has been a big advancement in recent years. The language capabilities have dramatically improved, and you can now use these in some cases more than 100 languages, depending on the tool. I can't guarantee that in every single case the the language that you particularly want will always be there, but in many of these tools, they're continually refining the language variety that they have, and there's usually a quick kind of trying to see if I can just illustrate this. Yeah, so let me switch screens here, and I'll switch back to the Letterly screen. And you can see here on the right side, I recognize it's small, but it has, for example, Afrikaans is the first language listed here, and then it has Arabic, Armenian, Azerbaijani, Belarusian, Bosnian, and so forth, right? And we're just in the Bs. So we've got a lot of languages here, including very common languages and also, less common languages. So yes, so that's a great question, and yes, they're and again, I wouldn't assert that they always have all these tools have all the languages, but I'm increasingly impressed at their breadth of language coverage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if you have feedback on languages that you try, please let me know. This tool is not free. There is a free trial, and you can sort of test it out. But again, you can use other tools that are free that do a very similar kind of a thing. And so one of those, again, would be Mac Whisper on the Mac side or Vibe on the Windows side. So there are almost always kind of free alternatives to these more premium tools. And the premium tools typically will cost 5 to 8 or 10 US dollars a month. So just as a ballpark figure. And for me, that's well worth the cost if I'm using it on a daily basis, right? Multiple times a day in some cases. It's doing quite a lot of valuable work for me, and saving me time and saving me money I might spend otherwise. You can use these to draft social media posts. You can use these for so many different kind of use cases. But for me, it's the 5 that I mentioned. There are other ways of using our voice with AI. And so one of these is advanced voice mode on ChatGPT. So if I open up ChatGPT, there's a little, I know you probably can't see this, but there's a little dark button right by the microphone. So I can either dictate or I can click that kind of wave button. And now I'm able to speak with AI, and I can ask the AI to help me prepare for an upcoming presentation. Can you help coach me through this presentation that I'm giving? I'm going to share the opening, and I want you to coach me on how I might deliver that more enthusiastically or with more verve. Can you help me with that?
Absolutely. I'd love to help. Go ahead and share your opening, and we'll work on making it even more engaging and dynamic.
I'm very excited to be here, and I hope this is an enthusiastic and excited opening. How did I do?
You're off to a good start. To add more verve, try varying your tone and energy. For example, emphasize keywords like excited and enthusiastic.
Okay.
And maybe add a slight pause before you say how you feel to build anticipation.
Okay, that's great. That's
Also-
really helpful. I'm also demonstrating for people how you, as an AI assistant, can use your own emotional capabilities, right? Emotional replication capabilities to simulate a kind of attitude, right? So I could use you as a partner to prepare for a difficult conversation with someone who might be short-tempered or anxious or nervous or angry with me, right? So I can use you to rehearse a conversation, a difficult conversation, right? Can you give me an example of how you might role play in that regard?
Absolutely. I can definitely help you role play a challenging conversation. For instance, if you're preparing to talk with someone who might be short tempered, I could respond with impatience or frustration, giving you a chance to practice staying calm and composed. This way, you can rehearse how to navigate the situation effectively and feel more confident going into it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that guidance, and I will talk to you later.
You're
Okay. So one thing to note is when you do that, you always get the transcript afterwards. So if there is something you're talking about, if you're talking through your idea and you do want to get feedback, right? In the previous mode, the bionic dictation mode, I was not getting feedback. It was just my ideas, right? It was just me getting my ideas out of my head. In this case, this is actually giving me a thought partner, pushing me, hopefully, if I'm using it well, it's hopefully eliciting my own ideas. It's hopefully pushing me to be more creative or to think about something differently, or it's interviewing me, right? It's called a reverse interview when you kind of use AI to interview yourself in order to get your ideas to realize what you actually think about something, right? Many of us have had the experience where we only realize what we think about something when someone asks us, right? And we start talking about it. And so this can kind of have that sort of help you have that experience of having it ask you questions and you start to realize what you think about something or clarify your own thoughts. So, so those are a couple of ways of using the ChatGPT advanced voice mode. Increasingly, the other platforms also have a voice mode that has this kind of interactivity, including Microsoft's Copilot and Google's Gemini. So this is not just limited to the ChatGPT platform, although that one I particularly find useful.
And in your experience, Jeremy, we have a question from Jen who asks, how sensitive are these voice modes to different accents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing I would say is, caveat emptor, like each person should try and see what your experience is like. Don't take my word for it. Definitely just open it up and test it out yourself for any of these tools. Each person's experience, your mileage may vary, as they say, like your experience is going to be unique to you. In my limited experience, it's quite sensitive to the accents that people have because, in other words, it still understands people with different accents. And part of the reason for that is at this point, these are global companies that have users all over the world, and they have a sufficient number of tests and examples and uses of these. They even have employees who are working all over the world. And so, and now the tools have been around for a couple of years, right? So initially, some of the usage was limited, but now it's really been used quite a lot. So they have a lot more accents to work with in terms of their test data. And in my experience, they've worked well. But again, I'd love to hear from you. You can try them out and let me know if you've run into something where it's really not responding well to your accent. I'd love to learn about that. And if it isn't, by the way, you might try one of the other tools because they're each going to be slightly different. So if ChatGPT's voice mode isn't understanding your accent perfectly or isn't working for you as well as you'd like, try the Copilot advanced voice mode, for example. And by the way, these tools will typically work both on the laptop or desktop computer as well as on your phone. One other voice tool. We're still in the mode of like getting our ideas out of our head, right? Getting our ideas onto paper. We've talked about bionic dictation, right? We've talked about this ChatGPT conversational AI. And now this is a more pure dictational kind of AI. And what I'm going to do is hit the function key on my laptop with this tool called WhisperFlow. And there are various tools like this. So I've just hit the function key, and now I'm talking just as I would normally talk Maybe I'm writing an email, I'm in my email program, or maybe I'm in my Microsoft Word or Google Docs, or maybe I'm in Notion, or maybe I'm in some other tool, my slide deck creation tool. And rather than typing all this stuff out, I'm just talking it out. Throughout the day, I'm using lots of different programs, right? A lot of us are using a lot of different tools across our laptop, and we are typing. Some of us have hand injuries. Hand injuries and typing injuries are more and more common these days because people spend so much time with their hands on the keyboard. And it slows us down. We can actually talk several times faster than we can write on average, most people, and than we can type, I should say. And so being able to dictate is quite helpful. So I'm going to release my finger now. And what Whisper Flow is going to do is it's going to take all the ums and uhs out of what I've just said, and it's going to basically put that text on my clipboard. So, or directly into the app I'm using if I'm writing an email, or again, Microsoft Word, Google Docs, whatever I'm using. So basically, it's a kind of like a magic dictation button that's AI powered that's available to any application I'm using. So I don't even have to use Whisper Flow. I don't have to open it up, right? I'm just working in whatever application I'm already normally using. And now it is basically copying and pasting, copying onto my clipboard, right? The material that I've just spoken, right? So I can basically now reuse that, or paste it in, or if I'm already in a software tool, it'll automatically be pasted in, saving me quite a lot of time. And if you use this throughout your day or periodically during your day, you're going to find that it has. I'm going to actually paste this in to our. So let's see if I can share it with folks. I'm going to paste in what I just typed, just so you see what that looks like. And maybe we can share that out with all of you, just to see what I just dictated, right, was now on my clipboard. So that's one other usage of AI for getting your voice material down onto paper. So we're now up to searching. One of the other things we do with AI, we've talked about using AI with our voice. We've talked about using AI for meeting notes. We search all the time. Many of us are still using Google on a daily or weekly basis, maybe some other search engine. And what I want to suggest is that we are moving past the old Google era. So if you are accustomed to just using Google as your primary search engine, it was the best search tool for many years. And I would make the case, maybe controversially, that it's no longer the best way to search for some things. For certain things, if you're just looking for the name of a website or something very simple, it's fine. But for a growing number of things where you really want to understand something, Perplexity is the tool I'm going to suggest is much more effective at this point and really opens up all sorts of new opportunities for understanding and working more efficiently and creatively and effectively. So I'm going to give you a specific example because that's a pretty bold claim that I've just made.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely I'm a Googler. So
yeah, I'm sure many of us are, and I still use Google on occasion. So I won't want to, but anyway. So yeah, sorry, Sarah, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say that I'm definitely a Googler, and I think many of us still are. So I'm intrigued about what you're saying, that maybe it's not the best option anymore, but also I'm concerned about trust. I've heard that when you're using AI to search things, it sort of can just spit anything out at you, and it's not necessarily trustworthy. So can you speak to how do we know that the results that we're getting are trustworthy?
Yes. So such an important question. And I want to illustrate this in a very clear way by showing you rather than just telling you. So I'm going to pop over to a Perplexity search window just to illustrate this live. With live results, you never know what you're going to get, right? So we'll see if we get a good result here. But I'm going to pop in here a search. Okay, I'm asking it to provide a list of the most cited and peer-reviewed studies on the impact of microplastics on marine ecosystems. I'm very concerned about this environmental issue. And I'm asking it to also explain how microplastic presence has increased in marine ecosystems over the past 10 years. Okay, so that's my query. Now I've hit return. Now it's doing the research. And to answer your question, Sarah, while it's doing this research for me, it is going to provide me detailed citations. So anything that it's asserting here is going to have a citation with it. So I can actually see, you can already see the sources noted here, and we can dig into them. So it is not just asserting something. It is not just hallucinating something. It's actually doing this in detailed analysis, and it's giving me the detailed citations. And you'll note that next to each, I know it might be hard to see on the Zoom screen or on the computer screen, that there's little numbers here, right? These are essentially footnotes, and these are notating where it's getting this information from so that I can check the source, right? As rigorous information professionals, we always want to make sure we're checking a source, looking at the source. And so all of these sources are listed. And in fact, if we copy and paste this into a Google Doc, we're going to see all of the sources broken out here, but we can also see them right here. We can click on the source button, and now we can see all of these sources. NIH, National Institutes for Health, which is a US institution, Science Direct, which is a professional publication, Frontiers, another professional scientific publication, NOAA, the National Oceanic, I believe, I forget what it stands for, but it's a national science organization, Nature, which is a very prestigious publication, scientific publication. So it's drawn from top-notch publications. UNESCO is one as well. And I can click here through to the results so that I can actually read these, right? So I can click over here, and now it's going to open up. It's opened up on my computer a separate window with those results. So I'm able to verify myself, right? I'm not just trusting, verifying. But importantly, these results are giving me a great summary of what this material is actually saying. It's not just throwing 100 links at me, right? Doing a Google search on this kind of subject is like going into a library and having librarians say, well, there's 100 books somewhere in that section. Just go have a look, right? And that's not particularly helpful, right? It's still imposing on you to dig through each of those links. And the links are often ranked in a commercial way, right? Based on how much SEO investment they've placed, as opposed to, how much quality information there actually is in some cases. Whereas this is really giving you just the core substance, and now you can follow it up. So I might want to say, what are the main sources of microplastics in marine ecosystems? So that was just an initial search, and now I can dig deeper in the direction that's most relevant for me. And I can keep going down these chains. 40% of people who use Perplexity actually end up using one of these follow-up queries. You can also ask your own follow-up query if the ones that they suggest aren't relevant for you. And again, all of these have micro citations. So it's also worth noting that it's not just that they give you a bunch of sources, right? Because then you'd still have to dig through them. They give you the source, a citation as a footnote to the specific claim or detail, right? And this applies whether you're doing a search for, any kind of leisure information or scientific information, political information, business information, really whatever kind of topic you want to look at.
And I'm interested, Jeremy, your prompt at the top, that original prompt, was really long. Is that so? I guess my question is there any advice that you can give to our listeners about how to engineer good prompts, and how do we get the AI to give us the information we want? Because, for example, if I was to Google this topic, I would just sort of type in microplastics ecosystems impact. Like that would be my Google search.
Yeah, great question. Absolutely great question. So we often use Google with just keywords, right? Just like microplastics, history, useful studies, or how has we use these kind of shorthand keywords. And with Perplexity, my guidance, my tip would be to be as detailed as possible. So instead of just using a very short search, I'd encourage people to be more thorough, more specific, and more detailed. And this brings up a broader point I want to make, which is that people have this misperception, in my view, this is my personal view, that the AI material is often mediocre, that it's kind of low quality, mediocre, et cetera. I hear this a lot from people who are just starting to use AI. And my response is, garbage in, garbage out. If you give a very generic kind of prompt, you're going to get very generic response, right? Even if you did that for a human, that would be the same result. So with Perplexity or with any of the primary AI assistants like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or Copilot, you have to be very specific, very detailed, very assertive in saying what exactly you are aiming for, what the context is, what the parameters are. So I want to edit this piece. I want some help copy editing this piece with specific attention to grammar, spelling, syntax, word repetition, punctuation, long sentences. I want to make sure that the words are active verbs, and I want you not to rewrite my text, but to give me a list of suggestions and explanations for why I might want to make those changes so that I can, as the human, go back and independently strengthen this piece of writing. So that's an example of a very detailed, assertive, specific prompt, right? As opposed to make this better or help me write this thing, right? Which is what sometimes people's default usage is. So that does take a little practice, kind of just as if you had a human assistant, you'd have to figure out how to coach them along or how to guide them or what information to give them or how to give them detailed, specific instructions, right? So yes, that's a great question. And yes, be specific, be detailed, and be assertive in your prompts.
I have two quick questions about
Yes.
Perplexity. We've got one from Michael who asks, why use Perplexity to search the net when we can use ChatGPT? Is that because ChatGPT makes things up? And then a similar question from Damien says that Perplexity looks very similar to ChatGPT. Is there any specific advantage that Perplexity offers?
Yeah, so these are the reasons why I think Perplexity is particularly good. It has these citations that are detailed and clear and well chosen. It's brief, its responses are brief and concise. It has multi-step reasoning, so it digs deeper. It gives you those follow-up questions. ChatGPT doesn't necessarily have all of these features, right? ChatGPT came late to this game where they added a web search functionality. Originally, ChatGPT would just hallucinate stuff, right? As many people probably experienced, and that's part of why it had this reputation early on. So it does now have a web search feature, and Claude actually added a web search feature recently as well. But they don't have all of these elements because they're not primarily designed as AI search tools. They're designed as kind of broad, multi-purpose AI chat tools. So just as many single-purpose tools will work more effectively because they're designed for that purpose, I would say that in my experience, Perplexity operates a little bit more efficiently and effectively. You can use it for free, by the way, completely for free. You can also use it in incognito mode for the security concerned among us. You can even use it without being logged in at all. So, and you can use it in an incognito tab on your browser if you want to. So it has those advantages, which aren't necessarily the case with those other tools like ChatGPT. And it also has these really helpful follow-up questions. One other feature it has is you can set up a space where you organize your searches into a folder. You can actually now do that kind of thing on ChatGPT too, but most people don't use that feature. So it has some additional functionality. By the way, with Perplexity, you can also have it summarize or analyze or search PDFs or other documents that you give it. It doesn't have to be just a web search. So it has a lot of multifunctional kind of uses. But yes, back to the question, you can use ChatGPT with the search function turned on. My experience has been better with Perplexity for this. One other quick note, since we won't have time to get into deep research, which is a new mode of AI research, Perplexity has a deep research mode that is free for 3 deep research searches a day. And that will basically just do a more thorough search of not just 10 or 12 sources, but up to 50 or even 80 or 100 different sources and give you 8 pages of really detailed research report that's organized and includes tables, whereas just an ordinary search will not. So that's a new feature, deep research with AI that you can do on Perplexity. You can also actually do a deep research on ChatGPT. And on the free plan, you get 5 of those per month. So you have to use them carefully. But those are exceedingly thorough. I've gotten a 40-page report, for example, about the development of AI training programs for journalists around the world. 40 pages detailed with very detailed sourcing. So that deep research mode is incredibly powerful. There's a little handout that I have for those who are interested that maybe we can share in the chat, or you can see the link on the screen if you don't have that in your chat, in case you want a quick one-page handout with some example searches and tips on Perplexity. I'm independent of all of these organizations, by the way. I just find them useful. So I have no financial stake in any of these companies, nor do I see them as perfect, right? They each have their strengths and they each have their limitations, and I use them each for different purposes. For those of you interested in academic research or searching professional publications, there's a tool called Consensus, where you can ask a question or a research topic and see what the consensus is, or the extent to which there is a consensus among professional peer-reviewed journal publications. And you can, again, use this for free to a certain extent, and then eventually they're going to ask you for a paid subscription. But this is a great way to get professional research kind of from professional journals. Okay, this might be the last one we have time for. So this is about using AI to enhance projects you're working on. And there's multiple tools that you can use for your projects. And a project is something that's an ongoing area of responsibility. Maybe you are, for example, organizing work at a volunteer soup kitchen, for example. Maybe you are the manager of a particular project initiative at your work. I use Claude for my projects, and I'll show you an example of why very briefly, or give you a little summary of why. What Claude projects allow you to do is to, rather than starting from scratch each time you do an AI inquiry, where you're kind of having to instruct in detail, what is the context? What is the purpose of this query? What am I looking for? What are my constraints? What role do I want you to play as the AI? Instead of doing that every single time, you set up a project once. For example, I am teaching a new class, and I'm going to be revising my old syllabus. I'm going to be preparing new lesson plans. I'm going to be working on some new ideas for visuals and slides. I'm going to be preparing some videos ahead of time, and I just want some help organizing all of that. So what I can do is basically give Claude some documents, right? Here's my syllabus. Here's my past syllabus. Here's some of my past lesson plans. Here's some notes I've made about what I want to do in this course and how I want it to do it differently, and some of the opportunities I'm hoping to capitalize on, and whatever other materials that are relevant. Then I set some instructions. So I tell Claude, I'm teaching graduate students. These are students who have this amount of experience. These are the kind of interests they have. I'm not giving them names of students, right? I'm just giving them the type of kind of context, the goals we have for the class, the learning outcomes that I have in mind, et cetera, and how I want Claude to help me. So for example, I want it to ask clarifying questions when I give it instructions so that it can help me in a way that's most relevant and useful. And I want it to be concise. I want it to be clear. I want it to not write things for me, but suggest things that might be useful for me to think about. So I give it those kinds of instructions. And then I task it to do all kinds of things. I can have it build a dashboard for me. I can have it build a plan for me, how I should organize my planning for the next few days, given my objectives. I can have it give me revision suggestions for my set of lesson plans I've been working on. I can have it write a simpler version for those students who are English language learners. I can have it translate one of my lesson plans or one of my agenda handouts in multiple languages for students who speak different languages. I can have it ask me questions, or I can actually ask it about blind spots. What topics haven't we covered on this subject that I might want to think about adding? What questions am I likely to encounter from students about this syllabus? And so on and so forth. There's so many examples of how this has been useful for me, such that I now have a project set up for everything that I'm working on, basically. I teach a volunteer class about classical music. I was formerly a violinist. So I happen to know a lot of the material, but not all of the material. And there's a lot of historic musicological material, music theory material, music interpretation material, music performance history that I don't necessarily know all of that. And so I will sometimes use one of these tools to basically fill in some gaps, make sure what I'm saying is not leaving things out or not missing opportunities, right? To create engaging activities and exercises and interactions. There's all kinds of ways in which it supports my work and so can support your work as well. This is an example of a trend archaeology project I set up. So I gave it a lot of old journalism industry reports, and basically asked it to help me think through some interesting topics I might want to dig into in these reports, and to give me a citation for where in those reports I could look for those topics. So this is an example of kind of asking it to push me and to kind of point me to where in this material I might want to do some further exploration. So there are other tools. This, by the way, Claude Projects does require a paid Claude subscription, which is $20 a month, which is substantial for those who are on limited budgets. I consider it a professional tool. I consider it like having a full-time assistant because I use it all the time. And an assistant in New York City might cost me well more than $20 an hour, and this is $20 a month. So I think of the cost in that regard. I don't compare it to another kind of simple tool. I compare it to the cost of a full-time human assistant, which I could not afford, and many of us could not afford. But I recognize that it's not for everyone an affordable cost. So there's a free alternative, which is Notebook LM. So Notebook LM is a tool from Google, which essentially is an AI-powered notebook. In fact, when you sign up for Notebook LM with your Google account for free, you can set up 50 different notebooks. And in each notebook, you can have up to 50 different sources, right? A source could be a huge document or a series of documents. It could be a YouTube video. It could be an audio file or a video file. It's all sorts of stuff. Sorry, you can have 100 notebooks. And each document can be 500,000 words, right? So it's a huge context window of material you can feed to it, and then you can query it. And unlike other AI tools, it's not going to search the web. It's just going to focus on your materials and give you guidance, help you find things in those materials. So if you're like me and you've ever lost track of where you put something or which notebook something was in, this can be a tremendously powerful way of incorporating AI into your workflow, basically just adding AI power to your existing notes and materials. And I would encourage
definitely,
yeah.
Sorry, I definitely echo you in Notebook LM is because this is the one AI tool that I do use. And I've used it for a lot of things from transcribing meetings to actually I gave it two versions of a contract, a work contract, and I asked it to make sure for me, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't know anything, to make sure for me that the different clauses that I'd asked to be changed had actually been changed and that I could see the implications of those clauses changing. We've got 4 minutes left, so I wanted to quickly ask you a few questions that we have
Please.
from the chat. The first one that I was hoping we would get was from Trish. She says, are there any AI tools that create professional presentations or slides? And I mean, I saw your whole slide deck and it looks so great and colorful. So I know you have an answer for this question.
So the answer is yes, there are tools. Personally, I actually prefer to use non-AI tools much of the time. So again, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning about curious pragmatism. I find that I still like to manually move the words around, the images around in Apple's Keynote software. It's really good, simple software. It works offline. I just have grown comfortable and familiar with it, and I find it works really well and gives me a lot of flexibility. I do also occasionally, though, use a couple of AI tools for individual slides. So 1 or 2 slides or special decks. The tools I'd recommend are Gamma.app is one of those tools. Another one is called Beautiful.ai. And I've written about these in Wonder Tools. So if you go to wondertools.substack.com, you can find posts about many of the tools that I've written about. And the third is well, there's more than 3. Pitch.com is another one for business presentations. You can use AI for those. It's got a lot of wonderful templates, so you don't have to design from scratch. You can use an existing template and just modify it. And there's a brand new one for those who want really, really new stuff. This is not even fully out yet. It's in beta. It's called Chronicle HQ. And that has a phenomenally gorgeous design sensibility that I'm super excited about. So there's a lot of these tools, but if you want a simple 2 to choose from, I would start with Gamma, Gamma.app, and Beautiful.ai. Those are 2 really good ones for AI generated slides. But as I said, I'm wary of generating entire decks with AI because I've found that sometimes the results, some of the slides look good, some of them don't. So I tend to only want it to generate a particular slide or help me with a particular slide here and there.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Jeremy. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I would say one is, adopt the experimental exploration mindset if you want to dive in further to AI, wherever you are. Some of you are experts already, that 25%. Some have never used it. Wherever you are on that curve of exploration, I encourage you to try one new thing each week with AI. We are in a new era. This is just as significant as the computer era when computers first appeared in the 1980s, let's say. It's just as significant as the mobile era when we first had, the week I got married in 2007, we had the first iPhone. That was a huge moment. and mobile phones changed our behavior, changed the capabilities we had. The social media era, right? The internet era. Many of us can remember the first time we were online. This is a new era, the AI era, of as significant as any of those prior technological eras. And so you want to be able to capitalize on that for your own benefit, not because you have to, not because someone else tells you to, but because it just enables us to do so many things, to be creative, to be productive, to enjoy our work, to do better work, not just faster work, but do actually higher quality work. Because it can point out our flaws, right? I use AI to say, what have I left out? What would a critic say could be better about this? What are the fallacies? What are assumptions I'm making, right? And the AI can really help you make your work better. And to find ways of working more enjoyably and more efficiently is something that would benefit any of us. So that would be my guidance, is try one new thing each week, one step at a time. Doesn't have to be everything, just one new thing at a time, and find a way for it to resonate with your own workflow in your own life. And I think you'll benefit from that. And if you want to follow up, I'd love to hear how this resonated with you, or things that I got wrong, or things that I got right, or things that you should think I should know, or things that you want to share with me about your own experience. You can write to me at jeremy@jeremycaplan.com, and you can subscribe to Wonder Tools if you want to read more about this, learn more about this, be on this exploration journey.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Everybody really loved what you had to say, Jeremy, and were super engaged. I think we are still so interested, and we know that there's still so much that we don't know. So for everyone here, we would like to say that we are going to try and get a part 2, so that all of those questions that you had that we didn't get around to answering will hopefully be answered, and everyone in the audience will be the first to know if that comes about. But thank you so much for joining us. Jeremy, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks everyone for being here and for sharing your time and exploration with us.